Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be continuing our legacy series of webinars today, and this one is around delivering continuous improvement with Wonderware software. Hopefully you managed to have a look or attend the previous one. And what I did want to start with regards to that was actually a security recap from that webinar. So we are going to cover a few details just around that. It's just very short. Then we're going to move into a bit about the product lifecycle. So this is specifically referring to Wonderware software. And then the support program. So it may be a support program that you dialed into. It may not be, and it may be something that you're looking at. Then we're going to talk a little bit about latest technologies, because I feel like it's important, especially with the whole upgrade thing at the top of your, or at the forefront of your minds. And this is also introducing a little bit about what we're going to talk about in the next webinar too, because next month we're hosting a webinar all around the latest technologies and the benefits that you can get out of moving to that latest version. And then we're going to cover quite a sizable piece on training, because things have moved on quite a bit since you probably last saw any sort of promotion on training. So we have added quite a few things to that. So then just to recap on this security element, and if you did attend the webinar, you will have seen this slide. I'm not going to read out all the points on there. I just really wanted to show the importance of this due to things like legacy operating systems receiving things like no updates or security patches. This makes it much more increasingly vulnerable to ransomware and other cybersecurity attacks. It's a huge and important driver for the majority of our customers. We see a lot of our upgrades being done because of this, and it's becoming even more relevant in the recent years because of the targeted attacks against things like SCADAs and PLCs. We have seen an influx of these in the last few years. Like I say, I'm not going to cover more detail. I just thought it important to recap and just show you some of those figures if you weren't aware or you haven't seen them, and the importance. And if you look at that last webinar, we also talk about how Wonderware is starting to help to address some of these things in the latest releases, how to make sure and the reasons for keeping current. But I suppose in terms of upgrading specifically for a Wonderware system, here we're going to talk and move into the product lifecycle. So this is a timeline of the system platform release that's been out there for quite some time, since 2003. InTouch has been even longer. They do run hand in hand. So when you get a new release system platform, you get a new release of InTouch. So they're currently up to version 2017 update 2. The interesting thing about this, in terms of the lifecycle management, is our mature support phase, which I will explain all the different phases shortly, actually sits here at this point in time. So if you're running a version 2012 or behind that, then you're certainly in the mature phase of support. Extended support goes into these two at this point in time, but actually from December 2014, these two versions here are going to move into that mature support phase. So it is only going to be these versions of 2017 that is in mainstream and extended support. So there's a real drive and there's a real compelling event to get current, especially if you're looking at things like legacy hardware and legacy operating systems, looking at the security risks that are coming into businesses these days, and you want to get current. The chances are you're going to have to upgrade your software to be supported on the latest versions of these hardware and the operating systems that we're talking about. We mentioned quite a bit about security vulnerabilities already, but there's also a driver there for modernization. So with any upgrade, it makes an awful lot of sense to start to look at how you modernize your business. What are your key business drivers, and what else would you like to get out of that platform? And because of the way that the systems have come on over the years, there is a lot more that can be delivered now. So if you're looking at modernizing, you really want to understand how Wonderware software can meet your business drivers, and certainly it's worth getting in touch with us about that. There's lots of engineering efficiencies as we move through to later versions, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. there's lots of standardization, particularly with system platforms. So if you're looking to standardize across multiple lines in your plant or even multi-site, it's a great chance to do so. Also, a lot of customers upgrade for performance improvements. So the hardware might be running quite old, in which case that obviously has an impact on resources. So you might want to just do a hardware refresh, but in line with that, you may do your OS, and then the newer software, there's always performance improvements in the later versions of the software. And in system platforms case, we're now looking at things like 100,000 I/O in a single box. So, in terms of performance, it's getting to quite a large scale. And then lastly here, we've got things like the mobile workforce. So it's that new age worker. It's been able to get more details out to more people, I guess, to that managerial stance. And there's really seamless ways that you can integrate that now. So then if we talk more about the actual product lifecycle itself, so I've already mentioned mainstream support, and this is the first phase in that lifecycle, and it begins upon the date of general availability of that software release, and it continues for a period of 3 years. So at that stage, you'll receive technical assistance on issues under the Customer First program. I discussed more about that Customer First structure and everything that goes along with it a bit later in this webinar. It also includes any patches and service packs for the product that allow you to stay current in that version, as well as support for all those important OS security updates. So it's all the critical security updates from Microsoft. As with any software product, there are times when it is necessary for a hotfix requirement, or that's what we call it anyway, to resolve things like product issues. Requests for these are also supported at this stage of that support lifecycle. So you get a full host of support things, and it's probably not too different from supplier to supplier. We then look at extended support, and this is obviously the next phase, and it spans the next 2 years of that lifecycle. So between mainstream and extended, we cover the first 5 years of general availability. So Customer First subscribers here are entitled to technical assistance on issues and inquiries, and they do get hotfix requests for specific product issues, and then limited support for critical OS security updates. So there is still support there for those things. And then the final stage is mature support. So this is anything outside of that 5-year life cycle. So it does offer ongoing technical assistance, and there are different levels of this depending on who you're talking to. So I will explain again an awful lot about our internal team in terms of local support based on your regions of UK and Ireland, versus what happens when we have to move it out to the States and to that global support structure. So this does include technical assistance via the existing programs that we've talked about, but does really only involve providing basic issue diagnostics and assistance, using access to like a global knowledge base that we have access to. In-depth research into your inquiry should not be expected really in this phase, and instead, if you have some sort of product issue, rather than being able to request hotfixes, you'd be asked to upgrade, because an upgrade is likely to include a fix for that problem that you're seeing. If there's a hotfix that exists already for that problem at that version, then the chances are that you'll be able to get access to that. But otherwise, an upgrade would be required anyway. So then if we move into a bit about Customer First, and these are just some of the key drivers as to the reasons why people may take it out. So one of the top ones is obviously continuous software maintenance and innovation through software version upgrades to evolve your Wonderware solution in many ways possible, some of the things we've already discussed. So this is essentially just, if you're on support, you get free license upgrades. Again, very similar between different suppliers, but it can save you an awful lot of money, especially if you have that continuous improvement program in place. You get access to the technical support experts, and in terms of our local support, there's obviously a wealth of experience there. It's between the working hours of 8 and 6 during the day, Monday to Friday, and then depending on your support level, you get access to like around the globe type support for severe or plant down type situations. There's also optional services and system management applications. So that enables you to do a little bit more. So it might be that you want to monitor your infrastructure, from a Wonderware or a hardware perspective. It may be that you might want a health check on the system. There's also something where you can do a software asset management, so you can have a look at all the software that exists on all your machines. So these types of things are sort of additional services that go above and beyond what a standard customer first support contract will provide, some more so than others. But then if we look directly at our local team, so this is obviously the region of the UK and Ireland. It's dealt with at our head office here in Cheadle. We have 12 certified engineers on our help desk, so we're certainly one of the bigger distributors in the world. When I say the certified, they actually have 95 technical certifications between them this year so far. Most of these are the Wonderware Certified Support Program or Certified Trainer Program for a variety of the different products. For those of you that don't know what those exams are like, they're 4 hours long, there's around 120 questions, and they have extremely high pass rates. Yes, they're open book, but still, there's there's an awful lot of questions you have to answer. So they take a lot of time, a lot of development time out of the working day, or sometimes it happens outside of the working day, for those that really want to get those pass rates in. But we have an awful lot of accreditations there. This year, so far to date, the team have handled around 2,000 Wonderware tickets. This is almost double the amount on what we did last year, and we're always making sure we have the right resource in our team to be able to deal with that. But it just shows really that they can deal with such a high volume of cases, which I think is really impressive. In terms of how they prioritise all this, so they judge it based on the severity of the case that comes in. So obviously the most extreme one is a plant down situation. Plant down, there's lots of different cases as to how that happens, and different between organisations. But they adhere to getting the plant back up and running in some way, shape or form. I'm not saying that it'll be back to the standard production, but inside a one-day maximum time frame. So past that, they'll then change the escalation to something called a 1.5, and they'll continue to speak to you on a very regular basis, and multiple times a day until you get back to a happy state. Our technical department is not limited to just that service desk, so we have a much larger team in our organisation. It creates a great level of internal escalation before we have to look elsewhere, or pass it out to our global counterparts. We've got a systems architects team, so they have a lot of knowledge there, a lot of expertise and technical experience, and also consultants. And these guys are obviously very used to being on site in those high-pressure environments that you guys are running. Our support team centre the customer experience around something called a Net Promoter Score. It's a very well-known accreditation for service desks, and this has been introduced for quite some time, many years, and the team have evolved in the way that they work to provide the best possible customer service. So one of the first things they introduced back when it was first done was remote access. If you've ever called into our support desk, you've probably done remote sessions with them before. It's just a much easier way to see exactly what's going on. It's just a very clean example as to how MPS has helped us to change the way that we work. And this score has gone from strength to strength, and it's currently at the highest it's been since we introduced it firstly. So it's something that we're continuing to look into improve. And it's also very difficult to get a good score in this. So for those of you that don't know, it's only actually a score of a 9 or 10, which is considered a promoter. So it goes towards a positive score, and anything below that is either a neutral or a detractor. So that's why it's such a good accreditation to have. It also provides us with some great direct feedback from our customers. Anything that we see in there that's negative, we react to as soon as we physically can do. But I wanted to share some of the recent positive feedback that we've had in relation to this. So just going to reel a couple off there. So our customer here is very happy with the service provided. He's got no issues at all. Everything is always sorted out quickly and efficiently. He said that he may be looking at system platform, but will be in contact when they are ready, NPS score of 10. Customer explained that he's very happy with the level of service provided by Solutions PT, tech support, always give excellent service. The customer explained that he had called the tech support for help with an issue he had. The service he received was excellent. In fact, the two people he dealt with went above and beyond to help him. He has no further requirements. He would highly recommend it to others and gave NPS 10. And I do really like this one, so I pulled this one out, but the customer was very satisfied with the service from Solutions PT. He posed a problem to them and they nailed it, so very happy. I could go on and on. I'm obviously not going to because it's pretty boring for a webinar, but it's just to give you an insight into how important it is to have that support team local to you with those skills and expertise to be able to be on hand to be able to resolve your issues as quickly as possible. In terms of Wonderware escalation, so there are occurrences where we have to go externally. So at the bottom here we have yourselves, our Wonderware customer base. So there's different forms of customer first that you can have, and they provide different levels of service. So the majority of our customers are standard members, so it provides you with those 8 till 6 working hours. That being said, if a plant down comes in at 5 p.m. on a Friday, the guys will not go home at 6 o'clock. They will ensure that you are happy before they leave the office, or leave the office and carry on working for you, or raise it to a higher level. We then obviously have ourselves in the office, and I've talked an awful lot about our team internally, so that is what is considered a level 1 support. I like to think that we deliver a bit more than that, especially with that internal escalation, with that expertise that we have here. And then it goes on to Wonderware globally. So this is access to level 2, so it's a more advanced support for the extremely complex issues, or even to the Wonderware development team. And that really only happens when there's people that are requesting hot fixes and we're looking at replication of issues. So there's quite a simple flow there. There's this connection here from right the way through our internal team, and you're updated on a very regular basis for that. So that gives you some insight into our support department. And then what I wanted to move on to is just a bit about latest technology and how some of this can help, particularly with modernization, with things like doing upgrades, because there are some features that have come in that really help with that kind of thing. But I really wanted to narrow it down to system platform. So yes, there's a lot of people running just our standalone InTouch package, and InTouch is a great piece of software, great HMI, and it runs and it sits, and they're continuing to migrate it so that you can get some of the latest features and benefits, get better performance out of it. The thing is, with tag-based solutions like these, which most of our competitors have, they don't hold the context of that data. So there is some attempt usually to piece them together. So in InTouch's terms, they have things like smart graphics and super tags and things that hold some form of IO reference, but there's no true context there. The difference with system platform here is that it allows to be contained within a digital asset. So this is ideally based around the ISO 95 type equipment modeling, where you can model classes for your equipment or of your equipment. So in this case, we've taken Valve an example. So you have runtime versions of those assets, obviously, so there'd be multiple valves inside of your organization. And then inside of those assets, you have lots of configuration, properties, everything that's associated with it. So some real context that's held there. And if you've seen us present system platform before, then you've seen an awful lot about this. But I just want to take it on a slightly different spin. And this is something that we're going to introduce in a little bit more depth later on in the next webinar, which is next month. And then we're going to be hosting a whole host of roadshows around the country in November, which will go into some really big detail around this. So yes, the system platform technology, the underlying technology is still the same. We still have all those assets at the bottom layer, and it doesn't matter what kind of assets. We connect to virtually anything, especially these days. And there's a lot of software components that make up that system platform piece. Now, I just wanted to jump out into one of the key features around upgrading. And again, I've shown this slide probably about a year ago, maybe even longer now. But this allows for inline upgrades. So if you are at a point where downtime is absolutely not an option, they now allow for inline upgrades. So you'll know with System Platform you get true redundancy out of the system, all store and forward for historical data, etc., etc. You can now install, upgrade, migrate, and fail over objects between your automation objects between the two servers, so you can keep it up and running for as long as possible. And then just talking a little bit more about this digital asset. So if we take a machine, our assets are obviously everything at that bottom layer that we're referring to, but we're talking about adding this data in context. So in terms of the machine, this is what we've come to expect from our machine, from our asset that lives inside of our SCADA environment. In terms of System Platform, this has always been described as our object-based design type system. So it's about having everything connecting to our machine and delivering that functionality. There's obviously other things associated with it, things like the physical look and feel of it. That's also very important. People need to understand where it lives inside of the plant, for example, or exactly what it looks like, or perhaps using P&IDs. And there's lots of different ISO standards that you can adhere to and you can follow to secure that physical model of that. And System Platform really helps with that. What we're going to start moving on to, and things that we're going to start talking about more next month and in the roadshow, is going beyond that. So it's about operational performance. So we're talking about the operational use of that asset. So this isn't talking about things like a digital twin, but it is the longest element of a digital twin. So we're talking about things like being able to do things like OEE, like quality, like recipe execution, understanding exactly what recipes are going through that asset at what particular time, perhaps energy management, and then even further than that, looking at your APM, your asset performance management, things perhaps like predictive maintenance to prevent those reactive calls to the support team and reacting to adverse situations and setting up the right maintenance routines and things. And all of this is housed inside of that System Platform environment. So I just wanted to show one last slide on a bit about some of the technology. So we've got obviously that System Platform base. We now have lots of different clients that you can use to be able to deliver based on your requirements. So there's, I'm not going to go into detail about any of them. The key thing here is that we get that bit right. We get the System Platform bit at the bottom, that digital asset functionality at the bottom correct, and then it doesn't really matter which client we're using at that top end, because we can deliver the functionality that you need from that System Platform environment in any of them, depending on your requirements. And then obviously it'd be crazy not to mention that obviously we're fully adopting that cloud approach as well, and certainly the hybrid approach seems to be the way forward with that. So it's just a very, very brief insight into the latest technology, the things that we want to start to move on to, a bit about inline upgrade, because upgrade is obviously a key driver for all the things we've talked about over the last couple of webinars. So then, lastly, I did want to talk about training. Obviously, if we are getting up to speed with the latest versions, we need those training courses in place to be able to use and engineer all those solutions. So I thought I'd just put our training course offer on the screen just so that you're aware of it. All the details are available on our website, so if you did want to have a look at it, go to our website and do so. But just to give you some idea, obviously the InTouch is a standalone InTouch package. It's a full 5-day course, so there's a lot to take in on that. Obviously it's been around a long time, so there's a lot of features and benefits you can get from it. Application Server is part of that System Platform environment. This is a 4-day course, and one of the things to note about that, which we've had some feedback on recently, is that this is the engineering side. So this is that asset modeling side that we're talking about at the bottom. So this is not providing that visual front end for you. To do that, you need to move on to a Intro to System Platform course or another client course that is available. So we host a 4-day course which covers both of our clients for the System Platform package, and that gives you that insight into how you actually present that data. We also, for one of the first times I've ever seen, have a What's New course, so very, very good for our RSI community that already know System Platform. We have a 2-day, very obviously stripped back course that just covers you the new features of what's been released in 2017. So it's 2017 for Application Server, and then the new client that we're seeing there. Historian client has been around for a very, very long time. Still very, very similar. We're expecting our 2017 release to be out early next year. And we also have our training calendar, and we will soon have a training calendar on the website for the first 6 months of next year as well. And then we do have on-demand classes that we do teach. Obviously, we don't schedule them because they don't run that often, but we do have in-batch and MES in there. And there's lots of different flavours underneath those. But one thing I did want to talk about was our virtual training offer. So we have just started branching out into delivering training virtually. It's instructor-led, it's not e-learning by any means. So it's exactly the same experience as coming to our office, other than that you're not in front of them. We urge that it's done through webcams and full conferencing facilities. We have a very good conferencing facility here in our office so that you can see our trainer delivering that course. And you get all the materials electronically, so you get things like the training manuals. You obviously connect to a WebEx type system so that you can see exactly what's going on in terms of the PowerPoint. And you get the full virtual infrastructure in the cloud to be able to connect and use the machines through a web browser. But in saying that, one of the key things about being able to understand whether your bandwidth requirements can deal with the virtual infrastructure is a PreCourse Information. So we have that hosted on our website. There's a whole new section on it related to virtual training. But just have a look at that, because there's some links in there that test your bandwidth requirements and tell you exactly what you need to be able to get the most out of the training. Although it can scale down the quality of the virtual machine to accommodate lesser bandwidth connections. We have slightly less courses available in there. Not much different. We just don't have the on-demand courses. Really, it's just the other ones, and there's no What's New course there. And it's certainly not something new. We have been running this for probably about the last year. We originally did it as a couple of pilots to ensure that it worked. So we did it for some big customers who wanted to host multiple people at the same organisation. They understood they were guinea pigs for it, but it went extremely well. We've now started to run courses, and they will certainly be scheduled in the training calendar for next year. So you now have an option to move out to do more, and it also helps with being able to do things like there's obviously less travel, there's less expenses, and it also means that you're out of the office for less time. So there's lots of things, and some of the feedback there you can see on screen from the recently taught courses. It's just been an extremely great experience for our customers. So then, just to summarise, obviously we talked an awful lot at the beginning about the product lifecycle. It's extremely important. It's important to understand which versions are going to be going into the later support life cycles, the extended and mature phases. All that detail can be seen on our support site. We talked about some of the benefits of Customer First and a bit beyond that. So looking locally at our internal team, our internal escalation route, what happens when we have to send that externally to our global counterparts. And then in terms of the latest technologies, we talked a little bit about having to able to use the latest technology to do things like inline upgrades, so things getting the latest versions, being able to do that with things like System Platform. And then a little bit about what we're going to be talking about over the next few months, just to give you an idea of the way that we're doing that, the way that we're expanding our offering. And then lastly, obviously that training offer and the way that things have changed and the capabilities of what you can do, all the latest offerings, and then obviously that virtual training that we've now started to adopt.